has been one of the driving forces behind this team. I think it's pretty cool to watch him, turn back the clock and silence all of his doubters. But I think this is going to be a great matchup there. In the NL, of course, we'll have Washington versus Pittsburgh or San Francisco, but we'll also have the Dodgers against St. Louis. That's an interesting matchup. Blake, do you think it's Dodgers, or do you think it's the St. Louis Cardinals, who are looking to make it to their second straight World Series?
St. Louis is a great team. And honestly, at some points this season, they looked as if they weren't going to make the postseason. Yet they always end up making it, no matter if it's wild card or if it's winning the division. This year, they won the division again. They did not look good at times, like I said. But the bottom line in this series is the Dodgers want revenge. Do you remember Clayton Kershaw's post-game remarks last year when he had a really rough outing in the game that the Cardinals ended up clinching to go to the World Series? He said, World Series or bust, and that's been the motto of the Dodgers the whole year. At times, they were trailing by over 9 games to the San Francisco Giants. They ended up winning the division, getting 94 wins, more than last season, by 2 games. And this is a team that's led by Yasiel Puig. Last year, he was kind of the hot star that nobody knew what was going to go on. I think this year, he's a lot more mature. He's ready for postseason play. He's been there. He's done that. Also, Adrian Gonzalez, the guy didn't even make the All-Star team, yet he's getting considered for the NL MVP. Outstanding numbers for him. 27 home runs, 116 RBIs. And then you got D. Gordon explosively stealing bases. And then I haven't even getting started on the pitching staff. Clayton Kershaw, we've talked about him enough. I think that's a definite win in Game 1, no matter what, at Dodger Stadium. Game 2, you'll probably have Greinke. Greinke has been really lights out as well for the Dodgers this year. Not as sexy stats as Kershaw, but been able to get the job done. And then the real question mark is if their second-year player, Hyun-Jin Ryu, is going to be able to play, because the guy had a great year, 14-7, 3.38 ERA. And if he's not able to go, I think they're going to go with Dan Herron, who's a proven veteran, but not as explosive as Ryu. But no matter what you say, I think the Dodgers are set up for a deep postseason run. Hanley Ramirez, another guy, I haven't even mentioned his name. This is one of the deepest lineups in all of baseball and also one of the deepest pitching staffs. I don't know how you could go against them with the home field advantage versus the Cardinals.
Yeah. So just an update. So Ryu is slowly progressing towards a playoff return. Not sure whether or not he will be able to make an appearance in the series against St. Louis, but he is getting closer. And he probably will play if they make it past this first round. But I'm going to go with the Dodgers here. I think it's the Dodgers' time. I think Yasiel Puig's had a good year. The second half, he's actually been nowhere to be found, but I think he comes back out for these playoffs. He's the kind of guy that absorbs the spotlight. He's always in the spotlight. And I think this is a good time for him to shine. I think the Dodgers finally get it done to advance. And just for the sake of time, because we are now across the 30-minute mark on this topic, just really quickly, Blake, who do you have going to the World Series and who do you have winning?
You know what? A lot of people are hating on the Nationals. The Nationals are a great team. Last year, they had all the expectations. They faltered, didn't even make the postseason. This year, win the NL. But I'm just totally messing with all you guys. I'm going with the Dodgers. No way am I not going to pick Clayton Kershaw and Yasiel Puig. I see the Dodgers winning the NL this year. So many explosive players, such a star-studded lineup. Got to go with LA. And then, on the other half, I think we're going to get our first crosstown World Series with the Angels making it from the AL since we have the New York Mets and the New York Yankees, I believe, at the bottom half of this century. I think it's going to be Angels-Dodgers, and that is going to be so fun and so entertaining to see. And I really don't know who I would pick as the winner right now. Guess I'll just have to see.
Okay, and I'm going to differ. I'm going to go with the Washington Nationals, led by stud pitcher Tanner Roark, not Steven Strasburg. And also, of course, who can forget about Doug Fister, who's had an exceptional year, kind of under the radar, 2.41 earned run average, 1.08 whip. I like them to make it, and as I said, the A's in the American League. I have faith in my preseason pick, and then, as I said in the preseason, the Washington Nationals will hoist a World Series trophy. I think this has been an exceptional season for them, and no matter what, I think this playoff has one of the best chances to have some of the most interesting storylines. I mean, the chance to have Dodgers-Angels, the chance to have the A's back in the World Series after such a long break, The Nationals proving themselves. You get the Pirates again. Baltimore, of course, in there. This is going to be a fun year, and of course the Kansas City Royals. I'm excited. I hope everybody out there is too. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now we move over to college football.
Let's take our first commercial break, Noah. Just cutting you off here. I think ready for our first commercial break. Got to get a water too, and I got to have the fans out there think about our World Series predictions and how accurate they're going to be. Let's take our first commercial break. Come back with some college football, discussing the rankings here on the Blake and Noah Show. Feel free to call in. I'm Blake Devine. This is Noah Taborda. Stick with us.
Okay.
Kicking it. What are we kicking? A soccer ball. That's right. Infinity Sports Network now has its very own soccer show. Hosted by none other than Jake Leiker, Byron Tollefson, and Noah Taborda. We bring you all the latest news on and off the pitch in the soccer world, whether it be the international or club level. Like us on Facebook at Kicking It. And don't forget to tune in once a week on Spreaker.com/Infinity Sports Network. Listen to us there.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back in to Blake and Noah, LA to Chicago, episode 4. Back from our commercial break. We're going to be talking a little college football now, and we're going to start with the top 25, which just came out, and then we'll get into a little bit of a discussion about what we've seen so far. So we're going to start with the number 1 team in the AP poll. Florida State still at the top. Oregon just 11 points behind them. We've also got Alabama, Oklahoma, and Auburn. Then we got Texas A&M, Baylor, UCLA, Notre Dame, and Michigan State rounding out the top 10. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Georgia, Stanford, and LSU to 15. Then we've got Blake's USC Trojans. Of course, also Florida State is his team as well. So he's got 2 top 25 teams right now. Blake, you're having a pretty successful year. I mean, of course, USC had that tough loss against Boston College, but finally both of your teams in the top 25.
Yeah, I mean, last year I had the thing added up. I think Florida State went 14-0, and USC went something like 9-4 or 10-4. I think they went 10-4. So overall, last year both of those teams went 23-4 overall. Pretty solid for 2 of your favorite teams in college football. Some people think I'm biased, but honestly, I was cheering for USC when they were really good, when they had Pete Carroll, and when Florida State was in the end of the Bobby Bowden era, and they were just absolutely horrid and would finish like 6-6 every season playing the Gator Bowl. But now they're the good team, and USC is the team that's kind of trying to revive itself. But both of them have had really solid seasons other than USC's unfortunate loss to Boston College. With that being said, no, I was going to cut you off there. Guys, if you want to call into our show today, call into 224-563-8444. One more time, 224-563-8444. That is the number to call into the Blake and Noah Show and share your opinions and thoughts on all of the sports topics that we're discussing today. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the latest coaches' polls and the chances of certain teams making the playoffs, so feel free to call in or text in.
Yeah.
Okay, with that being said, Noah, why don't you tell me your opinion on who you think thus far should be ranked number 1 in the nation?
It's tough. I think Florida State has had a pretty underwhelming start to the year. They've won the games, and that's really, at the end of the day, what counts. But the performances in the games have been pretty disappointing. Oklahoma State, they were in jeopardy of losing. Clemson in jeopardy of losing. NC State in jeopardy of losing. Their only team against a really not great team is Citadel, and even that game, they really didn't show up. It hasn't been the Florida State that we saw last year. Of course, there's plenty of time to redeem themselves. We've got a full season to go. So don't press the panic button, of course. When you win the first 4 games, there's no reason to press the panic button. But Florida State just hasn't been quite as impressive. And then there was Oregon, who I would have put at the top, but they just didn't play well against Washington State. It's very, very difficult. I'm going to put Oregon at number 1, barely. I'm going to put a tie right there. Oregon and Florida State, both underwhelming. I think both have had good games and they've had bad games. What puts Oregon above Florida State for me would be the fact that they beat Michigan State, who at the time was the number 7 team. Florida State beat Clemson, of course, but they just haven't looked quite as impressive. But both teams have a lot to work on if they want to win the national championship. Games like they had against Washington State and NC State, to win a national championship, you can't have those minor slip-ups. But then again, what we saw from Florida State last year, they know how to grind out wins, and that was one of their big specialities.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm a huge Florida State fan, and so far, it has just been ugly. It's been painful. Honestly, the thought that I had after last night's win versus North Carolina State, it was so painful to watch that game that it almost would have been better if we had lost, because then I wouldn't feel so disgusted after a victory. I mean, the fashion in which Florida State won that game was one of the most, embarrassing ways a number 1 team can win on the road versus North Carolina State. I don't know if North Carolina State's a good team. They were 4-0 coming in, but they honestly had played nobody. But to go down 24-17 at North Carolina State, it wasn't a night game. It wasn't a Thursday night game as they usually fall to North Carolina State under those circumstances. To go down 24-17, have that first play of the game touchdown, and then did you see how bad Florida State's defense looked? They looked horrendous. They could not make a tackle for their life. There were so many plays where North Carolina State looked so much more explosive than they should have been. Also, Jameis Winston, everybody's giving him credit for playing well, but honestly, the guy had 2 really bad turnovers, one of which was at a time when they could have clinched the game, just ran out the clock, and he decided to throw an ill-advised pass. He had 2 picks on the night. So far, Florida State has looked shaky at best. I mean, they really haven't looked great in any of their games because the Citadel is basically a high school team. Let's get real. Oklahoma State was a team that is coming off of like a season where they lost all their great players. It was in Arlington. Yes, that's kind of close to Oklahoma, but still, it was Florida State, big game to prove. They barely won that one. And then Clemson last week, everybody's like, oh, they didn't have Jameis. But honestly, even with Jameis, they almost could have lost that game. I mean, we are just lucky that we got that victory. Clemson, Noah, what were your thoughts on that game? I thought Clemson totally botched the game. They could have scored 20 more points than they put up on the board.
Well, I thought Clemson would win that game. I think Clemson made a mistake by not starting Deshaun Watson from the beginning of the season. Deshaun Watson, I think that definitely noticeable there. That guy has a lot of talent going forward. I think they made a mistake sticking with Cole Stout. I know Cole Stout earned it, but I think they should have gone with Watson. I think they probably, I think they could have won that game against Georgia had they had Stout. I think Clemson lost that game. I'm not one to normally say that, but it's tough for the running back. I don't know his name, but they were right there. All they had to do was run down the clock, kick a field goal to take the lead, and they probably would have won that game, and then the fumble happened. Florida State is catching a lot of breaks. And, of course, you're going to need some luck to go undefeated. But it can't happen like that. Florida State has to start taking care of business. And when it comes to Jameis Winston, Amir Abdullah, running back for Nebraska, they're friends, they trade together. He's on the spot. Jameis Winston has to mature. He's making boneheaded decisions. He's not being smart. He is a leader. He can't make decisions like he's making if he expects to get another national championship. It's time for him to grow up and realize that this guy is a year, 2 years away from playing in the NFL, from being potentially a starting quarterback, maybe even a franchise player, and he's acting like this. There's a lot for Jameis to think about right now if he wants to get another national championship.
And just make note before we just wrap this up, 4 interceptions already for him. And really, let's get real, he only has played 2 real Division I teams, Clemson and Oklahoma State, already 4 interceptions on the season. That's almost, at this point, I mean, he didn't play against Clemson. Let me say that again. Just NC State and Oklahoma State. 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Not good so far for Jameis. And you look at the schedule, And actually, I see a trap game happening on October 11th. Syracuse, they played the night game versus Notre Dame, and they looked all right. They didn't look awesome. But that could be a potential